The millionaire CEO paid her debt, but she never told him she'd had his baby to protect herself. 3 years. Roman Kingsley's voice thundered through Camilla's small apartment, his emerald eyes blazing with a fury she'd never seen before. You've kept my child from me for 3 years. Roman, please, lower your voice. She's sleeping, Camilla whispered desperately, glancing toward the hallway where 3-year-old Sophia was napping. Lower my voice. He stepped closer, his powerful frame trembling with barely controlled rage. You want me to lower my voice when you just told me I have a daughter, a 3-year-old daughter, that I've never met? That I didn't even know existed? You made it clear you didn't want. I made it clear I was terrified. Roman exploded, running his hands through his dark hair. I was 28 years old and scared to death of repeating my father's mistakes. That didn't mean I wouldn't have wanted to know about my own child. Camilla's hands shook as she backed away from him. Your father wasn't just absent, Roman. He was destructive, manipulative, cruel. I couldn't risk Sophia being exposed to that kind of toxicity if you turned out to be like him. So you made that choice for me, Roman said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that was somehow more terrifying than his shouting. You decided I was guilty by genetic association and sentenced me to miss 3 years of my daughter's life. 3 years of first words, first steps, birthdays. I was protecting her. Camilla's voice cracked. I was protecting myself. You have power, influence, money. If you'd wanted to take her from me, I wouldn't have been able to stop you. Roman stared at her as if she'd slapped him. What kind of monster do you think I am? Have you ever kept a secret so devastating that revealing it could either save your life or destroy everything you've built? Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and telling the truth that could change everything? My incredible Lux Love Chronicles family. What you just witnessed was the moment when 3 years of carefully guarded secrets exploded into the open, changing 3 lives forever. Today's story is about a woman who discovered that sometimes the biggest acts of love require the greatest acts of courage, and that the men who hurt us most deeply might also be the ones capable of the most profound redemption. But what happens when keeping that secret becomes impossible? What happens when the truth explodes in the most unexpected way? Stay with me, because this story will show you why sometimes the universe forces us to face exactly what we're most afraid of. If you're ready for a story that will challenge everything you think you know about love, forgiveness, and second chances, smash that like button right now and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to where this incredible journey began. Earlier that day, the mahogany doors of Kingsley Industries closed behind Camilla Rodriguez with a finality that made her breath catch in her throat. She clutched the manila envelope containing the debt forgiveness papers against her chest, her heart hammering so violently she was certain he could hear it from across his sprawling corner office. It's done, Roman Kingsley said, his voice that same whiskey-smooth baritone that had once whispered promises against her skin in the dark hours before dawn. Every penny of your father's medical debt erased. The house is yours, free and clear. Camilla stared at the man who had once been everything to her, now standing behind his imposing glass desk like some dark prince ruling his empire. 3 years had only made him more devastating, his black hair slightly longer, his emerald eyes more intense, his powerful frame perfectly showcased in what was undoubtedly a bespoke Italian suit worth more than most people's annual salary. The 31st floor of the Kingsley Industries Tower offered a breathtaking view of the city, but Camilla couldn't focus on anything except the way Roman's presence filled the enormous space. Even after 3 years, he still had the ability to make her forget how to breathe properly. Why? The word escaped her lips before she could stop it, though she knew she shouldn't question this miracle that had just saved her family's legacy. Roman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign that her presence affected him at all. Consider it a business investment. Your father's medical research was groundbreaking. The patents alone are worth 10 times what I just paid. The lie rolled off his tongue with practiced ease, but Camilla caught the flash of something deeper in those devastating green eyes. She knew this man's tells, had once been able to read every micro-expression that crossed his aristocratic features. This wasn't about business. This was about guilt, about the way their love affair had ended in flames and devastating betrayal. I can't accept this, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. The debt papers in her hands represented freedom from the crushing financial burden that had consumed her life for the past 2 years. Without this, she would lose the family home, the laboratory where her father had spent his final years developing treatments for rare childhood diseases. "It's already done," Roman replied, moving around his desk with that predatory grace she remembered all too well. "The papers are signed, the funds transferred. There's nothing left to discuss." But there was everything to discuss. Like the 3-year-old daughter sleeping peacefully in daycare across town, the little girl with her mother's auburn hair and her father's unmistakable emerald eyes. The child Roman had never met, never even knew existed, because Camilla had been too terrified to tell him the truth. As Roman moved closer, Camilla felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. He was near enough now that she could smell his cologne, that intoxicating blend of bergamot and cedar that used to cling to her skin after their passionate encounters. The scent brought back memories she'd spent 3 years trying to suppress. "I should go," she whispered, backing toward the door even as her treacherous body responded to his proximity. "Should you?" Roman's voice dropped to that dangerous register that had once been able to reduce her to trembling need with just a few softly spoken words. "Or are you running away again, just like you did 3 years ago?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. "I didn't run away. You made it perfectly clear that what we had was temporary, a convenient arrangement that had run its course." "Convenient?" Roman's laugh was bitter, void of any real humor. "Is that what you thought it was? Some casual affair I engaged in out of boredom?" To understand the magnitude of what was happening in that office, you need to know about the love story that came before, a love so intense it had nearly consumed them both, and so fragile that fear had ultimately destroyed it. For years earlier, Camila Rodriguez had been a graduate student in biochemistry, working late nights in her father's research laboratory while pursuing her doctorate. She was brilliant, dedicated, and completely focused on her studies, until the night Roman Kingsley walked into her world and changed everything. He'd come to the lab to discuss a potential research partnership, his venture capital firm looking to invest in medical breakthroughs. What was supposed to be a 15-minute meeting stretched into 3 hours as they found themselves deep in conversation about everything from molecular biology to philosophy to their shared love of obscure jazz musicians. "You're not what I expected," Roman had said as they stood outside the lab at nearly midnight, neither of them wanting to end the evening. "What did you expect?" Camilla had asked, suddenly aware of how intensely he was looking at her. "Someone older. Someone who wore lab coats and spoke only in scientific jargon. Not someone who quotes Miles Davis while explaining protein synthesis." That had been the beginning. What started as professional meetings quickly evolved into long dinners, weekend walks through the city, late-night conversations that lasted until dawn. Roman pursued her with a focused intensity that was both thrilling and overwhelming. "I don't do casual," Camilla had warned him after their first kiss, standing in the rain outside her apartment building. "Neither do I," Roman had replied, his emerald eyes serious. "Not with you." For 8 months, they'd been inseparable. Roman showed her a world of luxury she'd never imagined, private jets to weekend getaways, 5-star restaurants, Broadway shows in his private box. But more than the material things, he'd shown her a version of himself that few people ever saw. Behind the ruthless businessman facade was a man who read poetry, who had strong opinions about art and music, who could spend hours discussing the ethical implications of genetic research. He was brilliant, passionate, and when he focused his attention on her, Camilla felt like the most important person in the world. "You're dangerous," she'd whispered one morning as they lay tangled in his silk sheets, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. "How so?" Roman had asked, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "You make me want things I never thought I could have. You make me believe in fairy tales." "Maybe fairy tales aren't as impossible as you think," he'd replied, and for a moment, Camilla had allowed herself to believe it might be true. But fairy tales, as it turned out, were exactly that, tales. The end came suddenly, brutally, on a rainy Tuesday evening in March. "This isn't working," Roman had said without preamble as Camilla entered his penthouse, expecting their usual dinner together. "What isn't working?" she'd asked, confusion and dawning dread warring in her chest. "This." Us. You're getting too attached, and I can see you starting to think about futures that don't exist. The words hit her like a physical blow. I thought we were both getting attached. I thought that was the point. The point was to enjoy each other's company while it lasted, Roman had replied, his voice cold in a way she'd never heard before. But you're starting to look at me like you expect something permanent, and I'm not that man, Camilla. I'm not built for love or commitment or the kind of future you're imagining. When did I ever say I expected anything? Camilla had demanded, her voice rising with hurt and confusion. You didn't have to say it. I can see it in your eyes. Hear it in the way you talk about introducing me to your family. Feel it in the way you've started leaving things at my apartment. This arrangement has run its course, and it's time to end things before they get messy. Arrangement. The word had cut through her like a knife. Everything she'd thought was real, their connection, their intimacy, their growing love, he'd reduced to a business transaction. Fine, she'd said, pride lifting her chin even as her heart shattered. If that's how you really feel, then we're done. It is, Roman had confirmed, not even looking at her as she gathered her few belongings. It's better this way. Cleaner. Camilla had walked out of his life that night, her world in ruins. 2 days later, she'd discovered she was pregnant. She'd sat in that clinic bathroom, staring at the positive pregnancy test, trying to figure out how to tell a man who'd just informed her she was nothing more than a convenient arrangement that she was carrying his child. In the end, she'd made the hardest decision of her life. She'd chosen silence. You said I was getting too attached. Camilla's voice shook as she stood in Roman's office, 3 years of suppressed pain bleeding through her careful composure. You said I wasn't the kind of man who did relationships or commitment. You said our arrangement had run its course, and it was time to end things before they got messy. I said a lot of stupid things, Roman interrupted, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't identify. Things I've regretted every day for 3 years. The confession hung between them like a live wire, crackling with electricity and unresolved tension. Camilla felt her careful composure beginning to crack, the wall she'd built around her heart starting to crumble under the weight of his intense gaze. This doesn't change anything, she said desperately, clutching the envelope like a shield. I can't. We can't. Can't what? Roman stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his green eyes, close enough that her body began to remember exactly how perfectly they'd fit together. Can't acknowledge that there's still something between us? Can't admit that you feel it too? Before she could protest, his hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. The touch sent liquid fire racing through her veins, awakening desires she'd buried beneath 3 years of single motherhood and financial struggle. Roman, please, she whispered, though whether she was begging him to stop or continue, she couldn't say. I've missed you, he confessed, his voice raw with honesty that stripped away all pretense. Every day, every night, every moment in between. Do you have any idea what it's done to me, knowing I let you walk away? The admission shattered what remained of her defenses. This was the Roman she'd fallen in love with, the man who existed beneath the ruthless business facade. Vulnerable, passionate, achingly honest in ways that made her forget every rational argument her mind could conjure. When his lips finally met hers, it was like coming home and discovering fire all at once. The kiss was everything she remembered and more, desperate, hungry, flavored with 3 years of regret and longing. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer as her body melted against his with the recognition of something essential and irreplaceable. His mouth moved against hers with skillful possession, relearning the taste and texture that had haunted his dreams. She responded with equal fervor, all rational thought abandoning her as sensation took control. This was madness, kissing him in his office where anyone could interrupt, but she couldn't bring herself to care about anything beyond the heat of his touch and the way he made her feel alive again. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, their faces flushed with desire and the weight of everything left unsaid. Have dinner with me, Roman said against her lips, his voice husky with want. Tonight. Let me remind you what we were together. The request sent panic skittering through her nervous system. Dinner would lead to conversation, conversation would lead to questions, and questions would inevitably reveal the secret that could destroy everything. I can't, she whispered, stepping back from his intoxicating presence. I have obligations. Something flickered across Roman's features, disappointment mixed with resignation. Of course, you probably have someone new in your life by now. I shouldn't have assumed. There's no one, Camilla said quickly, the words escaping before she could stop them. There hasn't been anyone since you. The confession seemed to hang in the air between them, heavy with implication. Roman's eyes darkened with something that looked like possessive satisfaction, and Camilla realized she'd just revealed far more than she'd intended. Then what's stopping us? He asked, moving closer again. What obligations could be more important than this? Before she could answer, before she could make up some excuse that would protect her secret, her phone rang. The caller ID showed the daycare's number, and Camilla's blood turned to ice. They only called during work hours if something was wrong with Sophia. I have to take this, she said, turning away from Roman's penetrating gaze. Hello, Miss Rodriguez? This is Jennifer from Sunshine Academy. Sophia had a little accident on the playground and bumped her head. She's fine, but we think you should come pick her up just to be safe. Camilla's maternal instincts overrode everything else. I'll be right there. Don't let her sleep, and if she seems dizzy or nauseous, call 911 immediately. She hung up and turned to find Roman watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I have to go, she said, grabbing her purse and the envelope of debt papers. Thank you for everything. This means more than you know. Camilla, wait. Roman caught her arm as she headed for the door. Who's Sophia? The question froze her in place. Of all the things he could have asked, that was the one that could unravel everything. She's your daughter, Roman finished, his voice strangely flat. You have a daughter. There was no point in denying it now. Yes. How old is she? Camilla's throat closed completely. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the man whose child was potentially injured and waiting for her mother to come hold her. How old, Camilla? Roman's voice was deadly quiet now, the tone of a man who was beginning to piece together a puzzle he didn't want to solve. 3, she whispered, the single word falling between them like a bomb. The silence that followed was deafening. Camilla watched as understanding dawned in Roman's emerald eyes, watched as shock gave way to something that looked like devastation. Is she mine? The question was barely audible, but it carried the weight of everything that would change between them. Camilla closed her eyes, knowing that this moment would alter the course of all their lives forever. When she opened them again, Roman was watching her with an intensity that made her feel completely exposed. Yes, she breathed, and watched as her confession changed everything. If you're feeling the emotional intensity, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because stories like this are what Lux Love Chronicles is all about. The drive to Sunshine Academy passed in a blur of panic and regret. Camilla's hands shook on the steering wheel as she tried to process what had just happened. Roman knew about Sophia now. There was no taking back that revelation, no pretending it hadn't happened. She found her daughter sitting in the nurse's office with a small bandage on her forehead and tear tracks on her chubby cheeks. At 3 years old, Sophia was the perfect blend of both her parents. Camilla's auburn hair and delicate bone structure combined with Roman's emerald eyes and stubborn chin. Mama, Sophia launched herself into Camilla's arms, and the familiar weight of her child's body helped ground her in reality. This was what mattered. This beautiful, innocent little girl who had been the center of her world for 3 years. I'm here, baby, Camilla murmured, checking the bandage and gently examining the bump on Sophia's head. Does it hurt very much? A little, Sophia admitted, snuggling closer. But I was brave like you taught me. You're always brave, my love. The drive home was quiet, with Sophia dozing in her car seat and Camilla's mind racing with thoughts of what came next. Roman wouldn't just let this go. He would want to meet his daughter, would want to be part of her life. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Their small apartment felt like a sanctuary when they finally arrived home. Camilla settled Sophia on the couch with her favorite stuffed elephant and put on a Disney movie, grateful for a few moments to process everything that had happened. She was in the kitchen making tea when the knock came at her door. Somehow, she knew exactly who it would be before she looked through the peephole. Roman stood in her hallway still wearing his expensive suit, but his usually perfect appearance was disheveled. His hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it. and there was something wild in his eyes that made her pulse quicken with both fear and unwanted attraction. "How did you find my address?" she asked through the door. "I own half the city, Camilla. Finding one address isn't difficult." She could have refused to let him in, could have told him to leave and come back when she was ready to deal with this situation. Instead, she found herself unlocking the door and stepping aside to let him enter. Roman filled her small living space with his presence, his powerful frame making everything seem smaller and more intimate. His gaze immediately found Sophia on the couch, and Camilla watched as he took in every detail of their daughter for the first time. The resemblance was unmistakable. Sophia had inherited Roman's distinctive emerald eyes, the exact shade that had first captured Camilla's attention 4 years ago. The shape of her face was purely Camilla's, but her expressions, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, that was all Roman. Sophia looked up from her movie with curious eyes, unafraid but cautious in the way children are when meeting strangers. "Mama, who is this?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Camilla looked between her daughter and the man whose features were so clearly reflected in the little girl's face, knowing that whatever she said next would set the tone for everything that followed. "This is Roman," she said carefully, "an old friend of Mama's." Sophia studied him with the intensity that children often brought to new situations. Her emerald eyes, Roman's eyes, took in every detail of his appearance with scientific precision. "You have eyes like mine," she observed with startling directness. Roman's breath caught audibly. He moved closer to the couch, crouching down to bring himself to Sophia's eye level. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. This was his daughter, his blood, a piece of himself he'd never known existed. "I do, don't I?" he managed to say, his voice slightly rough with emotion. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Sophia Marie Rodriguez." She replied with the formal precision of a child who had been taught to introduce herself properly. "I'm 3 years old, and I like elephants and princesses and chocolate ice cream." "Those are excellent things to like," Roman replied, his businessman's composure warring with the overwhelming emotion of meeting his child for the first time. "I like those things too." "Really?" Sophia's face lit up with interest. "Do you have any elephants?" "Not real ones," Roman admitted, "but I have some pictures of elephants that live in Africa. Would you like to see them sometime?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically, and Camilla felt her heart clench at how easily her daughter was warming to the man she'd spent 3 years keeping away from her. "Are you hurt?" Roman asked gently, noticing the bandage on Sophia's forehead. "I fell down at school," Sophia explained matter-of-factly. "But the nurse fixed me up, and Mama came to get me. She always comes when I need her." The simple statement hit Roman like a punch to the gut. This little girl had spent 3 years learning that she could count on her mother, while her father had been completely absent from her life. How many scraped knees had he missed? How many nightmares had he not been there to chase away? "Sophia, sweetheart, why don't you go wash your hands and get ready for lunch?" Camilla interjected, needing a moment alone with Roman to establish some ground rules. Once their daughter had skipped off to the bathroom, Roman stood and fixed Camilla with a stare that made her feel like prey being circled by a very sophisticated predator. "She's beautiful," he said simply. "Perfect." "Yes, she is," Camilla agreed, crossing her arms defensively. "And I won't let you disrupt her life just to satisfy your own curiosity." "Curiosity?" Roman's voice was dangerously quiet. "Is that what you think this is? Some passing interest in an amusing child?" "I don't know what to think," Camilla admitted. 3 years ago, you couldn't get away from me fast enough when things started getting serious. Now you expect me to believe you want to be a father. 3 years ago, I was an idiot," Roman said bluntly. "A terrified, self-destructive idiot who had no idea what he was throwing away. But I'm not that man anymore, Camilla. And that little girl in there? She's my daughter. My blood. My responsibility and my joy." The raw honesty in his voice made something crack open in Camilla's chest. This was the Roman she'd fallen in love with, the one who existed beneath all the power and control. Vulnerable, passionate, achingly real. "She doesn't know," Camilla said quietly. "About you being her father. I've told her that her daddy lives far away and travels for work." "What?" Roman asked, though his tone had gentled slightly. "Because I didn't want her to feel abandoned. I wanted her to believe that her father loved her, but circumstances kept him away, rather than knowing that he simply didn't want her. I would have wanted her, Roman said fiercely. I would have wanted both of you. The conviction in his voice shook Camilla to her core, but she couldn't let herself believe it. Not yet. Not when so much was at stake. Before she could respond, Sophia came bouncing back into the room, her hands wet and her face bright with excitement. Mama, can Roman stay for lunch? I want to show him my elephant collection. Camilla looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Roman's carefully controlled expression, and felt the last of her resistance crumble. Would you like to stay for lunch? She heard herself ask. I would love nothing more, Roman replied, and the simple sincerity in his voice made her believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The next few hours passed in a surreal blend of domestic normalcy and earth-shattering change. Sophia chattered throughout lunch, regaling Roman with stories about her favorite movies, her best friend at daycare, and the butterfly she'd seen in the park yesterday. And then the butterfly landed right on my nose. Sophia giggled, demonstrating by touching her small button nose. Miss Jennifer said butterflies only land on special people. Am I special, Roman? Roman's throat tightened with emotion. You're the most special little girl in the entire world, sweetheart. More special than princesses. More special than every princess who ever lived, Roman confirmed, and Sophia's delighted laugh filled the small apartment with warmth. Camilla watched this exchange from the kitchen, her heart performing a complicated dance between joy and terror. This was dangerous, how easily Sophia was bonding with him, how naturally Roman seemed to slip into the role of doting father. But it was also beautiful in a way that made her chest ache with longing. Mama, come sit with us, Sophia called out. Roman wants to hear about my elephant collection. As they moved to the living room, Sophia launched into an elaborate explanation of each stuffed elephant in her collection. She had 12 of them, each with a name and backstory that she'd created with the boundless imagination of childhood. This is Peanut, she said, holding up a small gray elephant with floppy ears. He's the baby, and he gets scared sometimes, so I have to hold him when it thunders. And this is Princess Ella, she continued, producing a pink elephant wearing a tiny tiara. She's the queen of all the elephants, and she makes sure everyone is safe and happy. Roman listened with the rapt attention of someone discovering treasure, asking questions and responding with genuine interest that made Sophia bloom with happiness. Princess Ella sounds very wise. What's the most important rule in her elephant kingdom? Sophia considered this seriously, that everyone has to be kind to each other, even when they're scared or sad. Mama taught me that. Roman's eyes found Camilla's across the room, and she saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Pride, perhaps. Gratitude. Recognition of the incredible job she'd done raising their daughter alone. Your mama is very smart, Roman said softly. That's an excellent rule for any kingdom. Do you want to see my room? Sophia asked suddenly, the question innocent but loaded with significance. I have pictures of all my favorite things. Camilla hesitated. Sophia's room was exactly what one would expect from a 3-year-old who loved elephants and princesses, but it was also filled with evidence of their life together. Pictures of mother and daughter at the zoo, at birthday parties, during countless small moments that Roman had missed. If your mama says it's okay, Roman replied, looking to Camilla for permission. Just for a few minutes. Camilla agreed, knowing this was inevitable. Sophia's room was painted a soft lavender, with elephant-themed decorations and princess dress-up clothes scattered around. But it was the photo wall that made Roman stop in his tracks. Pictures of Sophia at every stage of her short life covered one entire wall. Newborn hospital photos where she was red-faced and tiny in Camilla's arms. First smiles that lit up her whole face. Birthday parties with elaborate elephant-themed cakes. Trips to the zoo where she posed with her favorite animals. 3 years of moments he'd missed, carefully documented and displayed with obvious love. This is me when I was a baby, Sophia announced, pointing to a hospital photo. Mama says I was the most beautiful baby in the whole hospital. She was right, Roman said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. You were perfect. And this is my first birthday. Sophia continued, pointing to a picture of herself covered in chocolate cake and grinning at the camera. Mama made the elephant cake all by herself. Roman studied the photo, seeing Camilla in the background, laughing as their daughter demolished her carefully crafted creation. She looked tired but radiant, the picture of a devoted mother celebrating her child's milestone. "And this one is from when I learned to walk," Sophia said proudly, pointing to a slightly blurry photo of her taking wobbling steps toward the camera. Each picture was a reminder of what he'd lost, but also a testament to the incredible mother Camilla had been. She documented every precious moment, creating a visual story of their daughter's life that spoke of deep, abiding love. "You have a wonderful collection of memories," Roman managed to say, his composure threatening to crack completely. As Sophia continued her guided tour, pointing out special treasures and explaining the significance of various stuffed animals, Camilla watched Roman's face transform. The controlled mask he wore in business melted away, replaced by wonder and love and devastating regret. When Sophia finally grew tired and curled up for her afternoon nap, Camilla and Roman found themselves alone in her small living room, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. "She's incredible," Roman said finally, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. "You've done an amazing job raising her." "Thank you," Camilla replied, though the compliment felt bittersweet given the circumstances. "I want to be part of her life," Roman continued, his green eyes intense with determination. "I want to be her father, not just genetically, but in every way that matters." "It's not that simple," Camilla protested, though her heart was pounding with hope and terror in equal measure. "Isn't it?" Roman moved closer, and suddenly the small space felt charged with electricity. "I love her already, Camilla. She's funny and bright and perfect, and she's mine. Ours." The possessive way he said "ours" sent heat racing through her veins. This was dangerous territory, allowing herself to think of them as a unit, a family. "What are you proposing?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Roman was quiet for a long moment, studying her face as if memorizing every detail. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "I want us to try again," he said. "All of us. As a family." "Roman, that's not. Why not?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne and feel the heat radiating from his body. "You just admitted you haven't been with anyone else since me. I sure as hell haven't looked at another woman in 3 years. We have a daughter together, and despite everything that's happened, I know you still feel what I feel when we're in the same room." He wasn't wrong. Even now, even angry and scared and overwhelmed, her body was responding to his proximity with the same desperate hunger that had once consumed them both. "Feeling attraction and building a family are two different things," she said weakly, though she made no move to step away from him. "Are they?" Roman's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "Because right now, looking at you, knowing what we created together, I can't think of anything I want more than to wake up next to you every morning and help you raise our daughter." Before she could protest, his lips found hers in a kiss that was everything their first reunion kiss hadn't been. Soft, tender, full of promise rather than desperate hunger. This wasn't the kiss of a man trying to reclaim what he'd lost. It was the kiss of a man who had finally found his way home. When they broke apart, Camilla felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm scared," she whispered against his lips. "So am I," Roman admitted, his forehead resting against hers. "But I'm more scared of living the rest of my life without you and Sophia than I am of trying to build something beautiful together." The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability he was showing her, made something crack open in Camilla's chest. This was the man she'd fallen in love with, the one who existed beneath all the power and control. "If we do this," she said carefully, "if we try to build something together, it has to be real. Not some arrangement for Sophia's benefit or guilt over missed time. It has to be because you genuinely want to be with me." "Camilla," Roman said, his voice rough with emotion, "I've wanted to be with you every day for 3 years. I just didn't know how to admit it, even to myself. And if it doesn't work? If we try and fail spectacularly? Then we'll figure it out," Roman replied, his hands framing her face. "But we'll do it together, as Sophia's parents who respect each other and want what's best for her." This story is getting intense, and I know many of you are thinking about your own relationships and the courage it takes to love again. Drop a comment below telling me what this story is teaching you about second chances, The promise was more than Camilla had dared hope for. Slowly, carefully, she let herself begin to believe that maybe this could work. Maybe they could build something beautiful from the ashes of their past mistakes. Okay, she whispered, the single word changing everything. We can try. 6 months later. The months that followed brought a transformation in all their lives that was both dramatic and beautifully natural. Roman didn't just visit. He became an integral part of their daily routine, gradually earning his place in their small family through consistent actions rather than grand gestures. He learned Sophia's schedule by heart: preschool pickup at 3:15, dance class on Wednesdays, library story time on Saturday mornings. He memorized her favorite foods, her bedtime routine, and the specific way she liked her stuffed elephant positioned when she slept. "Daddy, you forgot to give Peanut his goodnight kiss," Sophia would say during their evening routine, and Roman's heart would clench every time she called him Daddy, a title he'd earned through patience and devotion rather than biology alone. The transformation wasn't always smooth. There were moments when Sophia tested his authority, times when old insecurities made Camilla second-guess their arrangement, and occasions when the weight of their complicated past threatened to overwhelm their tentative future. But for every challenge, there were 10 moments of pure joy. Family movie nights where they all piled together on the couch, Roman making elaborate popcorn combinations while Camilla gathered blankets. Lazy Sunday mornings with pancakes shaped like elephants, Sophia's delighted giggles filling the apartment. Bedtime stories where Roman's dramatic character voices made both girls dissolve into laughter. "You're different than I expected," Sophia had told him one evening as he tucked her into bed. "How so, sweetheart?" "Mama said daddies were far away and busy. But you're here, and you make funny voices when you read stories." Roman's throat had tightened with emotion. "I'm here because there's nowhere else I'd rather be. And I'll always be here, okay? No matter what. Promise. I promise." Camilla, listening from the doorway, had felt her last protective walls crumble completely. The integration extended beyond their apartment. Roman attended Sophia's dance recitals, sitting in the front row with a camera and tears in his eyes as his daughter performed a perfect pirouette in her tiny tutu. He volunteered for preschool field trips, charming teachers and other parents with his genuine enthusiasm for 4-year-old adventures. "Mr. Roman," Sophia's classmates would call out when they saw him, and he'd greet each child by name, remembering their favorite colors and pet names with the same attention to detail he brought to business deals. Most importantly, he and Camilla were slowly rebuilding their own relationship. They talked long into the night after Sophia was asleep, sharing hopes and fears and dreams for their future. The physical attraction between them had never dimmed, but now it was tempered with deeper understanding and mutual respect. "I was terrified of becoming my father," Roman confessed one evening as they sat on her small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine under the stars. "He was absent, critical, impossible to please. I convinced myself that walking away was noble, that I was protecting you from his legacy. And instead, you almost became him anyway," Camilla said softly, "by choosing fear over love." "The irony wasn't lost on me," Roman replied. "But Camilla, watching you with Sophia, seeing the incredible mother you are, has shown me that love isn't something to be feared. It's something to be fought for." The proposal came on a warm spring evening, exactly 8 months after their reunion. Roman had planned it carefully, involving Sophia in a way that made it clear this wasn't just about him and Camilla, it was about their family. They were at their favorite park, the one where they'd spent countless afternoons pushing Sophia on swings and chasing her through the playground. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Sophia suddenly became very serious. "Mama, Daddy has something important to ask you," she announced, her 4-year-old face solemn with the weight of her secret mission. Camilla turned to find Roman dropping to one knee beside the park bench, pulling out a ring box that caught the dying sunlight like captured fire. But it wasn't just any ring, it was her grandmother's engagement ring, the one she'd sold years ago to pay for medical bills after Sophia was born. "How did you?" she whispered, tears already streaming down her cheeks. "I tracked down the buyer through 5 different collectors," Roman explained, his own voice thick with emotion. "It took 4 months and cost 20 times what you received for it, but it belongs with you. It belongs with our family. He opened the box to reveal the ring she'd thought was lost forever, a vintage Art Deco piece with a center diamond surrounded by smaller stones in an intricate platinum setting. It had been her great-grandmother's, then her grandmother's, and was supposed to have been Aurora's symbol of eternal love. Camilla, Roman continued, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. You are the strongest, most beautiful, most incredible woman I've ever known. You've given me the greatest gifts imaginable, our daughter and a second chance at love. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the trust you've given me? Sophia bounced excitedly beside them, unable to contain her enthusiasm. Say yes, Mama. Say yes. The proposal was everything their first relationship hadn't been: inclusive, thoughtful, centered around the family they'd created together. As Roman slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, Camilla felt the last of her protective walls crumble, replaced by a love stronger and more mature than anything they'd shared in their youth. Yes, she whispered, then louder, her voice carrying across the park. Yes. The celebration that followed was perfect in its simplicity. Sophia launched herself into their group hug, chattering excitedly about the wedding and whether she could wear a princess dress. Roman and Camilla looked at each other over their daughter's head, sharing a moment of perfect understanding. Are we really going to be a real family now? Sophia asked, her face shining with joy. We already are a real family, sweetheart, Roman replied, gathering both his girls close. This just makes it official. The wedding took place 6 months later in the same park where Roman had proposed, surrounded by family and friends who had watched their journey of redemption and reunion with wonder. Sophia served as flower girl, scattering rose petals with artistic flair and stopping to make sure each guest received an equal distribution of flowers. As they exchanged vows they'd written themselves, Roman and Camilla spoke not just of their love for each other, but of their commitment to the family they'd built together. You taught me that success without family is just expensive loneliness, Roman said, his voice carrying clearly through the garden. You showed me that the best investments aren't in stock portfolios or real estate. They're in bedtime stories and dance recitals and Sunday morning pancakes. You gave me the courage to choose love over fear, and I will spend every day of our marriage proving worthy of that gift. Camilla's own vows brought tears to every eye present. You came back not as the man who left, but as the man you were meant to become. You proved that people can change, that love can heal, and that sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we need when we're finally ready to receive it. I choose you, not just as my husband, but as my partner in raising this incredible daughter who brought us back together. When they were finally pronounced husband and wife, the kiss they shared was gentle but full of promise, witnessed by their daughter and blessed by the love of everyone who had supported their journey. As I bring this incredible story to a close, my Lux Love Chronicles family, I want you to think about the powerful lessons that Roman and Camilla's journey teaches us about life, love, and the courage to change. First, fear can make us abandon what matters most. Roman's terror of repeating his father's mistakes led him to make those very same mistakes. Sometimes our greatest fears become self-fulfilling prophecies when we let them control our choices instead of facing them head-on. Second, genuine change requires consistent action over time. Roman didn't win back his family with grand gestures or expensive gifts. He earned their trust through showing up consistently, day after day, proving his commitment through his actions rather than his words. Love isn't about what you say, it's about what you do. Third, children have an incredible power to heal broken families. Sophia served as the bridge that brought her parents back together, her innocent love creating space for forgiveness and new beginnings. Sometimes it takes the pure heart of a child to show adults what really matters. Fourth, the best families are built on choice, not just biology. Roman became Sophia's father not through genetics, but through choosing to love her unconditionally, to show up for her consistently, and to put her needs above his own comfort. Fatherhood, like all forms of love, is a verb. It's something you do, not something you are. Finally, love is always worth fighting for, even when it's complicated. Camilla had every reason to protect her heart, but she found the courage to risk loving again because some connections are too precious to sacrifice to fear. The greatest love stories aren't about perfection. They're about the courage to keep choosing each other despite the imperfections. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in the power of love to overcome fear and the beauty of second chances, I need you to do something for me right now. Smash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight for what matters most. Drop a comment below telling me what this story taught you about forgiveness, about the courage to love again, or about the power of family. Share this with a friend who's struggling with fear in their own relationships. Let them know that sometimes the very thing we're most afraid of losing is exactly what we need to fight hardest to keep. Remember this: if you've made mistakes in your past, if you've let fear guide your decisions, if you've lost something precious through your own choices, it's not too late. Love, family, and happiness are worth fighting for at any age, at any stage of life. The universe has a way of giving us exactly what we need when we're finally ready to receive it. And to any single parents watching this, know that you are incredible. Camilla raised a beautiful, confident, loving child on her own, and her strength made it possible for their family to eventually heal. Your love is enough, your sacrifice matters, and your children see your heroism every single day. Until next time, this is Mr. Wentworth reminding you that the most luxurious love stories aren't about wealth or status. They're about the courage to choose love over fear, forgiveness over bitterness, and hope over despair. Keep believing in love, keep fighting for what matters, and keep watching Lux Love Chronicles for more stories that will touch your heart and inspire your soul. The greatest luxury isn't what money can buy. It's the richness of a life filled with people who choose to love you, imperfections and all.